red. So I've got a very yellowy pale orange there. And then having done that, I'm going to take what's on the brush and mix that in with some more white. And we'll see how that looks for the beginnings of a very, very subdued fleece colour. Now, even though this is a background animal, and I don't intend to go into detail, I can still apply the paint in a direction which mimics the way the wool is falling across the animal's body. But again, without being too fussy about it. And as mentioned, I'm not particularly concerned about hiding these outlines from the drawing, at least not yet. I may cover them later. And that's one of the cool things about the watercolour marker, is you can just completely hide it by painting over with acrylic if you want to. Okay, so I quite like that colour so far. Now I want to introduce a little bit of shadow where the head is casting onto the chest of the animal. So I'm just grabbing some of the cerulean blue. And I've mixed that in with what's on my brush. So I'm not really mimicking exactly, or not at all really, the colours on the animal, but I am keeping them cool and pale. And we can use a little bit of that to hint at a little bit of shadow there. So hopefully it's just enough to begin to suggest a sense of 3 dimensions. Now I'm going to keep that colour, that pale fleece colour, on my palette, because I'll probably come back to some variation of that. But before I go on to another animal, I want to address the head of this one. So I'm going to come in, having just cleaned my brush a bit, going to grab some of the cerulean blue, a little bit of the ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt umber, and we'll grab just a touch of white, just so it's not too dark. Just going to zoom in on my photo here too. I think it's actually quite difficult to see the top of the head. I don't think the top of the head of this animal is quite as pointed as I'd made it, so we'll flatten that a little bit. Now the temptation is perhaps to start putting in things like a mouth and nostrils and eyes and things, but we're going to resist that for the moment. Fairly happy with the shapes of the ears I've drawn. They're not, exactly like the photo, but they're realistic enough, I think, to convince us the head of a sheep. So with relatively little work, we've now brought that sheep to life a little bit. And then, because I've got that colour on my brush, what I can do, I'm just going to spray my palette with a little bit of water there. I'll keep going with that colour, because this lamb is standing more or less at the same distance from the viewer as the adult. But what I can do now is just gradually refine the shape of the head that I'd put in, fairly crudely with a watercolor marker, and I can get the paint off the brush, put a hint of an ear in there going off to the left, and the other one's more or less hidden in the silhouette of the dark head. So I'm not going to do any more to the head there, but again I'm just going to wipe my brush off. Now, when I go to paint this lamb, I want to make it somewhat distinct to an extent from the adult behind it. But if the two kind of blend together a bit, then that's okay too. So what I've done is I've just picked up a little bit of that slightly darker yellow colour, gone back into the patch of colour I used for the adult, and I'm going to begin by just blocking in this little animal. With that colour. And at the moment, I'm going to leave that like that. I might need to refine the shape of the head a bit. Just trying to remember which... Yeah, I thought I copied that pose exactly from one of these lambs, but I don't think I did. I think I sort of did my own thing with it, which I guess is okay. But just confused myself a little bit for a moment there. There we go. That will do for now anyway. All right then, so on to the next two lambs. Now these two I want to bring forward from the background too. So the question is how to do that in this particular case. So I'm going to put a lot more white in there, and I'm going to grab a little bit of burnt umber, and we'll begin by just blocking in this body here. I'm just making a few adjustments again to my very simplified drawing that I did the other day. I think the body of this animal could do with being a bit longer actually. Again, for a first application of paint, that will do, I think. So now just cleaning the brush again, and going to go back to the darker colour I used, but I'm going to make it a little darker again. So I've just managed to get blue paint all over my hand. 1 second. Yes, so let's grab a little bit of water, and we will